welcome everybody to the Magic Beans podcast. We are back again for episode number 39. I'm your host tonight and my name is Shorty and I have just a couple of beans on the line with me tonight. We have Chewy. How you going, Chew?
I'm well, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good. And we also have Cracker. How you going, Cracker?
Very well, thank you, mate.
Good to hear. So this week we're doing something a little bit different. Normally we would be releasing a Evergreen series episode tonight, but we're going to do something a little bit different. We've had a topic sitting in our show notes for quite a while, actually. I think I probably put it in the show notes maybe about when the COVID stuff sort of started happening.
So about 74 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it was something that sort of spurred me to think about. A bit of a hypothetical that's actually turned into a bit of reality is how would we feel and how do we think the game would cope and, tournament integrity and structure and all that sort of stuff if Wizards decided to no longer hold paper tournaments. And if you've been keeping up to date with any of the regular news, you'll know that Wizards actually have cancelled all the rest of the major paper tournaments for the rest of the year. I think they actually said in the States that stores aren't even allowed to run events. Is that...
It's basically global now. It's the same here. Okay. There's no more sanctioned events for almost all of the world for the rest of the year.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, when I first sort of had that thought, that hadn't happened, and now we're finally getting around to recording this, and it has happened. So it's a very interesting scenario to be in, because for all of us here on the podcast, we've effectively grown up on Magic with paper Magic, and we've played a whole ton of paper tournaments where you go and sit down with your opponents and shake their hands, which is definitely going to be a thing of the past. Don't see that happening much anymore. But there's definitely this shift to online play, and Wizards has this shiny new toy in Magic Arena that they're pushing down everybody's throats, which is fine by me. But all the rest of the tournaments for the rest of the year are all going to be held on Arena, which suits us pretty well for being stuck at home and not being able to get out of the house that often with the kids and all that sort of thing. So not a huge issue. But what do you guys think about this sort of change and this sort of move towards online and digital play instead of paper as a focus?
I might just jump in and just frame this for the people listening so they understand fully what we're talking about here. So are we saying like our local game stores will no longer exist, Wizards stop printing paper cards and just become a digital product?
Yeah, we may get to that. We might get to that. So we're going to sort of go through a few scenarios tonight, and that's probably the one we'll wrap it up on. But
okay.
If we just sort of look at, I guess, where we're actually at
every
right
card
now.
To the reserve list and see how people feel about that. Yeah.
No, I guess we sort of take it to start with sort of where we're at right now, where what I was sort of hypothesizing a few months ago has actually come to fruition, where we can't play paper tournaments and we're playing online tournaments. It's the sort of thing where back then I was thinking, okay, maybe Wizards as a company don't want to hold Grand Prix anymore for, the fear
Players
of having too many.
Yep.
Yeah. So and that's obviously that's come to pass. So where do you sit on that, Chewy?
I need to remove emotion from it because, as you said, we've grown up with this game and, been playing this game for over a third of my life. And I have, through those events, those Grand Prix and, traveling interstate for PTQs and my local game store and all the rest of it, I've made some really good friends and that, and we talked about that in our community episode and right the way back to, episode 1 of this podcast. If you want to see the difference in audio quality between then and now, go back and have a listen. But, the people side of it has been a really big part of it for me personally, and I know for a lot of other people. So if that's the first thing, that my emotional response, my first reaction, if you like.
Yeah, you're going to miss out on the gathering of people.
Yeah, exactly. So that, I'm a social person, and that's part of what drew me to the game. Would it stop me playing the game forever? Will I sell up and, take my bat and ball and go home in a huff? No. I'd adapt and I would reminisce about the good old days, I'm sure, but, I would just adapt in time. There'll be a transition to the, new normal. The online social interaction platforms like your, Facebook, Spelltable, Discords, etc. would, continue to grow and develop. But it'll be a transition, and with any sort of change comes growing pains. So I hope it doesn't come to that, I guess, is my ultimate answer. If it did, it would take some time, and there'll be parts of the community that needed support in that transition. Some people would just absolutely love it because they were just like, oh, great, I can play this game competitively without, the mental exhaustion of interacting with other humans. But that's not me. I feed off that energy. So I would need to find an outlet for that in other ways. And that's a big part of the therapy that is Magic for me is that interaction. So I'd need to fill the void that would leave. So yeah, I'd worry about how some people would cope during that transition. But ultimately, you have to put the safety of the population ahead of that. Unfortunately,
ahead of a kid's card game.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah, like we're in Melbourne. We're recording in Melbourne, and we've gone back into a lockdown with the COVID stuff that's going on. And today was the first day that everybody had to wear masks, legally. Otherwise, you cop a nice $200 fine. And surprising driving around today, how many people I still saw getting around without masks, which is a little bit disappointing. But for us here, I think it's going to be quite a while before we can actually get back to playing tournaments. I can see stores opening up to play small tournaments, but your big PTQs and all those sorts of things, I don't think we're going to see them for like a year at least.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. What do you think on this, Cracker?
Well, I mean, when you suggested the topic of like how would we feel in our Discord, I wrote back sad. And that's the end of the cast, right? Like that sums it up. Like the thought of not being able to have that kind of, I don't know, that I never aspired to make it to the PT. Like it was always one of those things that I knew probably would never happen. But like going to GPs and going to like these other smaller tournaments and stuff, it's just heaps of fun, right? And yeah, I kind of echo what you were saying. Like it would be difficult, but I mean, we are there, right? That is the reality. We were getting ready to go to one in a couple of months was our plan. And, the Beans were all planning on traveling to one, and it was going to be a lot of fun, but, we've kind of don't have that option anymore. And so we've got these like arena events now instead. So I guess I am sad, but at the same time, I'm glad that there are other options available. So, I don't know. Everything's so weird, man. It's kind of hard to separate out at the moment, I think.
Just want to pick up on one little point you made there. It's like you said that's where we're at now. I think a lot of people are getting by now hoping or under the advice that this situation is temporary. And I know that knocked a bit of wind out of people's sails when, we've gone into lockdown too because, we've, had these numbers climb. But it's I know myself, it's like, I'm homeschooling kids, I'm trying to work from home and, things are different and things are difficult. I can't, hang out with my mates to cube or play Commander or whatever I want to do. But I'm like, we just got to get through this. This is temporary. I guess that's the mindset that a lot of people have right now. And if that becomes permanent, that is a whole new thing, right? If it's like if Wizards come out tomorrow and say, we're just, we're not doing it anymore. How do you feel about
Yeah, and that's kind of sort of where I sort of wanted to lead this in. It's what happens to the competitive scene and all that sort of stuff if Wizards say, okay, look, local stores can run small events.
Like your FNM or a draft or something? Yeah.
But we as a company, we are not running any sort of major tournaments in paper anymore. Everything will be done on Arena or Magic Online, that program that kind of still exists, assuming that they would put everything on Arena, and that's it from now on. for me, like as Cracker said, we've had these new arena events. Like we've got the Arena Opens, which I think was fantastic. That
they were great.
Both me and Cracker, we both made it to day 2, which was awesome fun. And there's another one coming up in a couple of weeks, which we'll probably be talking about the historic format on next week. Wow, I've completely stopped being able to talk. We will talk about that on next week's cast. But yeah, those sorts of events suit us better. As much as we like getting out a few times a year to a major event and catching up with people and that sort of stuff, from a competitive scene, that actually suits our play style better. Like you said, Cracker, I don't think any of us were really aspiring to be on the Pro Tour or getting to the Players Tours and that sort of stuff. We all would have liked to, and Chewy was lucky enough to get there once. I would love to go there, but I understand reality and the chances of me getting there are so small.
Yeah, but the reason I wanted to go is for the experience. It isn't that I ever aspired to be a pro player, and I think that's in the last 12 months we've seen this big shift in Wizards' attitudes with organised play, and I'm not going to say whether I think it's good or bad or whatever. Like I'm honestly, I paid attention for a bit, and then there were just so many things that happened I couldn't understand. I just gave up because it doesn't impact me. But I think that the changes are there, and the shift now is to digital. And more recently, there's been some organised play changes in the last couple of weeks where, they were basically giving people infinite roles on their PT invites for this whole perpetual we'll be back to normal soon thing. And I don't know if we ever will. Like, I don't think we go back to what we were. I don't see that happening. No. The thought of being, like I was saying to my wife last night, it's so weird to see, like, just TV shows or stuff where people just walk up to a stranger in the street and say, "Oh, g'day, mate, how you doing?" and shake their hand. I have done that to thousands of people, right? Like, you bump into your mate and they introduce you to someone you've never seen. You shake their hand, you say g'day, and like, I walk around with my hands in my pockets now. Like, I'm not touching anybody, right?
Yeah, you'll probably never do that again.
Do you remember concerts?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. Like, the thought of going into a small, stinky venue with hundreds of other nerds, right, and sitting across the table, 2 feet, 3 feet from a person, where, I just don't know that we get back there. And so I think that Wizards might actually already be in the mind space of this is never going to come back, and we should start sort of transitioning to that. And so that's why they've probably made some of the changes they have, right, where they're now doing some of these arena tournaments and, the Players Tour online. And, I think we're kind of trending that way already, with everyone hopefully in the back of their mind going, look, maybe one day this all just disappears and we can do what we did, in 2018. But I don't know.
What about the cards themselves? Have we seen things in the later sets? And I don't know how far back the sets were actually designed, but are we seeing things in templating, wording, mechanically that are, subtly leaning toward arena and away from paper play? So when I think about this, I think about, having a Menace, First Strike, Death Touch, and Flying Token on my, artifact creature 3/3 thing, right?
Yep.
That lends itself to a digital platform a lot better than it does a paper one. So, and we talked about that in our Ikoria episode, but, is that a nod, like a getting us prepared for a more digital game, away from the paper, an analog game?
Maybe. I think that there was some, and look, this whole episode's a little bit tinfoil hat, right, in some respects.
You guys have got yours on, don't you?
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, I was the guy who said there was going to be a Teferi with a static ability that counted all spells or something in the last set. So, don't mind me. There was a bunch of conspiracy and look, some truth to it in terms of cards seemingly being designed as more modal and sort of potentially focusing as a best of one, when everyone was terrified that, Wizards was pushing best of one on Arena harder than they were traditional Magic, as you would. So, look, Wizards would also be foolish to not, to some degree. Like, I think Arena is certainly a very large portion of their plan
roadmap
moving forward.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Roadmap, exactly the word I was thinking of. Yeah, roadmap.
I'd imagine
exactly
at the
right.
moment it's probably a huge part of their revenue as well.
I think it'll be getting there.
Yeah, but I think that's a really important thing, Shorty. Like, the game needs to function as a business to survive.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just see Wizards of the Coast as this, big faceless company that, is just, pushing for money all the time. And, there may be times where they are, releasing 14 secret layers in a week or something, and you go, oh, maybe they are trying to just bump up sales. But for the game to survive and keep the digital platform up to date, to keep new cards being designed, to pay artists, and then give prize money for events and things, like, it needs to sell product for that, right? That's fundamentally what they do. They sell Magic cards, and everything else around that is a vehicle or an advertisement to sell more Magic cards. That's their business model. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but I'm tipping that paper sales have, gone absolutely through the floor over the last sort of 6 months or so. So, and, I don't spend a great deal of money on Arena. Like, every now and then I'll buy 50 packs for $50 or whatever it is. So I don't know what revenue they're actually getting through Arena.
I saw Jeff Hoogland, I think it was, tweeted a couple of weeks ago. He spent like $3,500 on Arena or something like that.
Yeah,
so
I saw that.
Obviously there's people out there that are spending a lot of money. I mean, I've spent, I don't know, maybe $250, $300 on there. Cracker, you've spent $5?
Yeah,
$5, yeah. I'm probably about the same amount as you, Shorty, over the journey. Maybe $300.
Yep. But when you've got a huge player base, then all those small amounts of people just paying $5 adds up pretty quickly.
But does that compare to, I supported my local game store this week and bought a box of M21 because I wanted some cards out of that set. I wanted the Mecha Godzilla and all the rest of it. So I went and bought that, and I sat down after dinner with my daughter tonight, and we opened a box together and sorted the cards, and it was super fun. And, if there were no paper tournaments ever, then, I'd do that less often. And, they're losing that revenue as well.
Yeah.
So,
kind of, but the revenue that they're getting from Arena is direct. So you think about it, you're saying, I'm supporting my local game store, and you are. So you're buying it from your LGS, so they take a cut. They buy it from a distributor. They take a cut. You've then got the printing costs associated with, the actual physical side of it. And even though they're small, when you scale it out, they all add up. And so you take into consideration all the pieces of the pie that get, chunked out of a pack, if you would. Wizards are probably still taking the lion's share, but it's not like all of it, right? It gets split a lot of ways. So
if I buy a box per set, right? I'm spending Australian $160, right? I'm not spending $160 every time a new set comes out on Arena. I'm not even spending $50. I'm not even spending, I'm spending $50 every 2 to 3 sets.
Sure, but you've probably got 2 or 3 times the amount of people on Arena who would do that. Like,
yeah, not everybody buys a booster box.
Exactly what I was about to say. We're heavily enfranchised players, and we would buy a box most sets, right?
Yeah.
Except for Chris, who buy, I don't know, whatever Chris buys.
Yeah, shout out to Chris for keeping Wizards of the Coast afloat. We appreciate it.
But like you said, it's why these games that are free, like every game on your mobile or Fortnite or, like Dota 2, make millions and millions of dollars of microtransactions. Yeah. So it's these small things where you just go, oh, it's just $10. I just need some more gems because I really want that sleeve, right? And that's what Wizards gets, and they don't get $3 of that $10. They get $10 of that $10. So I think that's kind of the difference.
Yeah, their profit margin would have to be way higher on their digital products than their paper products. And
correct.
Yeah, when you scale that up to millions and millions of people, I don't think we've seen a number. There was a number that got put out a while ago of a player base, but I don't know if Wizards has actually released an official number.
Confirmed.
No. But I'm tipping it would be 10 million plus on Arena. That's a lot of people. And there's, of those 10 million people, I don't know, maybe how many people buy a booster box? Maybe not even 1 million, maybe 500,000 people buy. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what their numbers are, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. But yeah, you can definitely see why
we've cast infinite hypotheses here.
Yeah.
We are working with imperfect information as well, and I guess that is the premise of the episode, is just to initiate those discussions and that thought pattern.
Getting back to your point that you sort of started and we sort of took on one of your Chewy tangents was, are they designing cards for Arena? We've definitely seen that in, like you said, the Ikoria set with the counters. It just works so much better on Arena than it does in paper. Not long after Arena came out, there were a few changes, like the targeting rules with burn spells and things like that, targeting any target rather than listing out players and planeswalkers and things like that are just easier to read. Yeah, the modal cards that are heaps better for best of one.
But they've also done other things, like they've changed most cards to, instead of saying like target opponent, is like each opponent now. And that's a nod to Commander and multiplayer sets, right? So I don't think it's necessarily bad, as long as
definitely not.
If they're going to continue down the path of producing paper, which I can't see them getting rid of, right?
Well, we'll get to that soon.
But, as long as it maintains the level of functionality that it needs to be manageable. And that's always been apart from cards like Chaos Orb and really, really old stuff, one of Wizards' key components of the game is that you don't need physical dexterity to be able to play it, right? That's always been one of their rules. There's no physical requirement needed to be able to engage and enjoy the game as much as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. And there was a GP winner a couple of years ago who had his carer had to shuffle his deck for him, and still won a Grand Prix. So that's absolutely a true statement, and I think that's a great sort of thing for Wizards to adhere to. But I guess it's your point with the Commander cards being present in each sort of set. Back to my point of they sell Magic cards, that's what they do. So having things like the mass manipulation, right? That sort of big splashy spell. You look at that and you're like, oh, I'm going to put that in my ramp Commander deck. And it also has an impact on Standard. It's a good Magic card, but I think those cards exist with greater prevalence now with the advent of Commander than that they did a number of years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
And reprinting the ultimatum cycle and things like, finishing the ultimatum cycle. So perhaps it's just the same sort of shift towards Arena. Maybe it's not a tinfoil hat moment like I was alluding to, and people go, something's changing, and obviously think the worst. But so to go on my own tangent, and I'll end it here, is I don't think that is the case where they're just getting ready, preparing us to pull the cardboard rug out from under us.
Yeah, I mean, like the sets are designed 18 months to 2 years in advance anyway, so we've only had Arena for I think like 3 years, so we're probably only just now really starting to see sets that were designed specifically with...
Maybe. They would have been working on Arena for probably 2 years before that. So it's something that they would have had in mind for a long time. But yes.
Yeah. But yeah, you get cards like that Hacktoss, the Unscarred, comes into play and you pick a number at random sort of thing, like complete RNG as to what it's got protection from or doesn't have protection from. That's very much like a Hearthstone type card. That's not...
Yeah, or Rakdos the Showstopper, where you flip a coin for each other creature on the battlefield.
Yep. So things like that are in paper, they can be tricky. You can definitely do them in paper. It's not a huge problem, but on a digital client, that is... Yeah, it's a hell of a lot easier to do, and it looks cool, when you play Rakdos and you see coins flipping and things like that. It's
Well, I've seen some tense moments in Vintage and Legacy events with cards like Mind Twist and Hymn to Tura, where there's random, discard cards at random. Players not being clear about which card's which and things like that. So, it is a lot cleaner when it just happens and you don't kind of have a choice in it and like, I hope they don't hit my land.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so those cards have always existed and they function a lot better on a digital platform. I agree with that. Yeah.
So I was going to actually loop back around to one of the earlier things. I think we went on like a 10-minute tangent, was about tournaments and things. Do you want to get back to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we better wrap it up on that.
I think so. One of the things that I think will be really interesting to see how Wizards makes the change is we talked about the Arena Opens, and Shorty and I both played it. In fact, I think everyone had a go at it, and it was awesome because it was these in-client, X number of wins, N number of losses, done. Wizards have, and everyone has really struggled to this point to be able to run a like traditional paired round tournament to be able to get to like a top 8 and then have, like a playoff series, right? I wonder whether those are going to change because Wizards haven't actually released any of their own software or platform to do that. So far, they've always used someone else's. And here's my tinfoil hat. I wonder whether that structure might disappear because it's too hard and too big to do.
Yeah. So we have this weekend is the first Players Tour finals, and that's being played on Arena, but it's getting run through MTG Melee, which they've run the Red Bull events, which we've played in, which the first one we played in was horrible. It was just a horrible experience. But yeah, it's not in client. It's all done by third parties. There's issues with it, all that sort of stuff. For years, I've been saying and wondering, I've never understood the cut to top 8s. You play Swiss event, you play your rounds, and then there's this arbitrary, you made it into the top 8, but the person in 9th who has the same record as you but has a slightly different percentage because one of their opponents dropped from the match, sorry, but you don't make it. I've never understood that. It just seems weird, and then you play this huge event and you're so exhausted, you play 2 days of a Grand Prix and then you've got to play a top 8 at the end of that. It just extends the event. If you're playing at a GP, the tournament's shutting down and they've got to pack up everything, and the coverage is happening. You can see people packing up chairs in the background and things like that. It just seemed really pointless to me, and I don't know if that's just the way it's always been done in Magic. I'm sure there is a reason for it, but a system like the Arena Open where it's just you just play. And this is the cut for day 2. You just play and you have to get this amount of wins and you make day 2. And then you play on day 2. And if you get this amount of wins, you get this amount of dollars. And if you get this amount of wins, you get this amount of dollars. And there's no first, second, third, fourth, whatever, anything like that. Yeah, and that's, people want that number. They want to be able to say, I came first and whatever. I don't care if I come first. I'd much rather go, hey, I got 7 wins and I got $2,000. It doesn't matter what I came. I got $2,000 for it. That's awesome.
I guess that comes with the scaling of how big the events and the tournaments are. And because Arena is, anybody in the world can enter one of those events at any given time, there's no cap on membership and not membership, on sign up and
participants
to compete in those events. So the Swiss structure has worked well up until, you have like 1,000 or 1,200 people. And it's only in the last couple of years where we've seen that. Like the first couple of GPs I went to were like 250 to 400 people. And then even in Australia with the population that we've got and the distance that we've travelled to go to GPs, we do get, in the high hundreds towards 1,000. And then you think, some of the big things like Vegas and what have you. And we've seen with where they've had to, in Europe, I believe, was the first time I heard about it. They had to effectively run 2 separate GPs side by side, because the Swiss system just couldn't handle the pairings and those numbers. So it could be kind of the evolution of Magic, and part of the move to the digital platform to, loop it back to what we're, originally talking about here. The actual structure of events will need to change because, we just can't have that. And it will impact some people that, are hyper competitive and they want to win this event. You don't rock up to an F&M or a PTQ or a GP or a Pro Tour hoping to top 8 or hoping to cash. You're there ultimately, and no matter how realistic or not this is for each individual player, but you're there hoping to win. like, I don't know about you guys, but, you have those little fleeting thoughts where you go, what if I crush this event? What if I just like go undefeated in this PTQ and just run the top 8 and, how good would it be to be on the Pro Tour and all the rest of it? So everybody has those thoughts in their own way, right? Some people, stare out the window. Some people dismiss it. Some people like have dreams about it, right? So, but that as a fundamental structure does need to change. I agree with you, Shorty. For you might go, this is great because I don't care if I'm not going to be the winner, but there will be a portion, and admittedly probably a small portion of the Magic population that will be put off by not being able to say, I won. So I think they're in the minority, but given what we know about Magic social media, there are a group of people that have that mindset, that are very good at the game and have a lot of social media followers, that would complain about that, to say, I can't say I won a Pro Tour, I won a Grand Prix. I don't have that trophy. I don't care if I went 7x when, 20 other people went 7x. Can't I now play in a tournament with those people to see who was actually the best on the day? So that is a small minority, but I think it's a vocal one.
Yeah, I agree. I think, though, that I would miss it. Like, as much as I don't aspire to be on that, I do really enjoy seeing super high-level play. And I think that one of the ways I've gotten better at the game is by watching people who are much better than me. And
like my stream last night. Yeah, good. No, sorry, I digress. Yeah.
No.
But no, I agree with you. Watching,
so, like,
watching other people that are better than us play is a really good way to learn.
So I think something would be lost if we go down that path. The flip side is that I agree, and like, with Arena the way that it is, if I'm waiting a minute for a game in ladder, I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? Like, where is everybody? Whereas, the experience we've had, when Shorty was talking about the first Red Bull tournament that he played in, there was like 40, 50 minutes in between rounds. Now, when you've dedicated a day or a weekend to going to a Magic tournament, then that's kind of different. It doesn't matter so much because there's so many other things going on and you can do other stuff. But I think that the shift to digital brings with it the level of immediacy that people are expected to have, right? And so I think that puts an extra stress on the style of tournament that Wizards are used to running, where it's an all-day event and it runs for 8 hours, and that's fine.
Yep. So what I would like to see in that is for us have Arena Opens and a chance to qualify. So if the PTQ system was based on, a ladder, make top 1200 Mythic, that's great. I like that. Have Arena Opens if you have a particular record, you get prizes in cash or invites to the next event. But I would really like to see something like the Pro Tour Finals, where you have a discrete field, invite only, high level play with great coverage with the traditional format that we're used to seeing. I hope they don't just scrap the Swiss altogether, but I hope they just apply that where it's relevant. Don't try to have Swiss where it's too big to work, but then on the flip side of that, don't apply the Arena Open style to things like, Players Tours and Worlds. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
I think that's actually pretty close to what they're doing now, though, with my understanding of OP.
It's sort of like they're still playing I'm just looking at the article now. They're still playing
right,
like the qualifiers and all that sort of stuff, which are Swiss events.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I'm looking at like the Zendikar Rising Split Championship, things like that. They're 15 rounds of Swiss. There's a cut to top 8, that sort of thing. But if you get X amount of wins on day 2, that qualifies you for the next thing and that sort of stuff. So I would like to see that in between sort of what you're saying, Chewy, and what the Arena Open is giving us now, where it's, if you're playing a big tournament where you're expecting to get more than, 200 people, there's no Swiss. It's just, you just play your matches and you've got to get X amount of wins. And then if if it's a 1-day event or a 2-day event, whatever the cut is, but you get X wins and that either qualifies you for the next day or qualifies you for another tournament. And that is a small 32, 64 person tournament where a Swiss structure works really well, and you can watch it and, watch the tournament and see this person's on this amount of wins and all that sort of stuff. So a bit of an in-between, but...
Yeah, I'm all about that. If that's the structure, then I'm happy with that.
I've never understood, we played in a GPT, what was that, 3 years ago, whatever, the one where I won for Sydney, and there was 10 people there, I think, for the...
there was.
And so we played 4 rounds.
We had to cut to top 4.
Yeah, we played 4 rounds, and then we cut to top 4 to then just play some more rounds, and it just seemed so dumb. It's like, we can just play 4 or 5 rounds and have, okay, well, this person is undefeated, they are the winner, and this person has the next, best record, they are second place, and so on. It was just this arbitrary thing.
But during that same season, there were those events that had 100 players. So you can't leave it up to local tournament organisers to make that call. That opens it up to too many issues, and integrity comes into play at that point.
You can't do you just play whoever until you get X amount of wins when you're playing in paper, and that's part of this episode. Is if the move and the push is to digital, you no longer have that issue where you're running paper tournaments and you have to stick to that structure or whatever. If the Arena Open that's going to run in 2 weeks' time, they know they're going to get 1 million plus people, whatever, playing in that thing. So they know they're going to have the volume of people. They're not running a 10-person tournament. So,
well, I think that's a really good thing to draw parallels to. So if we use that example, we drove to, I can't remember, we drove across Melbourne.
Caroline Springs.
Caroline Springs,
all the other side.
From the eastern suburbs all the way to the west. And we went to a store we'd never been to, which was great. It was a good store. But, there was 10 players there. If we add up everybody who played in that GPT season across the world, you'd have a whole lot of people. So we had to make that shift. The store had to put on a judge. They had to organise the event. They had to do prizes, all the rest of it. Logistically, it was huge. Whereas if they just pull all of those people together and run events over, X days running for 24 hours, and people can play at the time that suits their time zone and their lifestyle, they're going to get more people to those events because you can do it from the comfort of your own home, and you're not reliant on paper cards as much. You're not reliant on, accessibility to the store and, so many other logistical factors when you can just play it on Arena. So I understand where they're coming from, and it makes business sense. It makes logical sense from a tournament structure perspective. But looping right back, and it's the last point I'll make, right back to my original thing, is that, we lose the people side of it. And that's there are so many things that make sense about moving things to exclusively or almost exclusively a digital platform. But I think Wizards would be remiss if they didn't somehow try to foster the community side and the people side, because there are a lot of people that are just as invested in the people that they play with as they are with the game. So for the game to survive, I truly believe that Wizards need to adapt to that. Not just adapt the gameplay, but adapt the community side of things as well. So, if anyone from Wizards ever listens to this, I doubt they would, but yeah, please think of the, it is Magic the Gathering, not Magic the on the couch in my trackies, right? So they need to have a way for people to interact with other human beings through the game, because that's one of the game's great strengths.
Yep. So to sort of pull all those tangents together, I guess our thoughts on that is we feel like the gathering side of it, the actual meeting people, playing tournaments, is very important and is such a huge part of Magic, and probably such a huge part of why it's been so successful, and we would absolutely miss that if that was no longer available to us. But we are happy with the direction of them pushing into a digital space and focusing on that a bit more, because it is just much more convenient and gives them much more options of the way that they can do things that are much more convenient for people to play in, and gives you a bigger player base to pull together to have bigger tournaments that are probably easier to run for most people. So yeah, sort of happy with where they're going, but it still needs something of what was originally there.
It's tricky, right? Because all you're trying to do is preserve the vibe, the feel of the tournaments.
Yeah.
In what you're trying to do, but I think that they'd be foolish to try and cling to the structure.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but there needs to be a transition.
Yeah, but I think now that we're kind of here, they should probably just push harder.
Yeah.
And then if it ever gets back to being where we can have huge gatherings of people for paper tournaments, then, you've got another chance to revisit things.
Yeah, it would also be a good chance to reboot a system. Okay, cool, we can,
exactly.
In 18 months, point, 2 years' time, they can go, they run digital tournaments for the next year to 18 months or whatever, and then it's like, okay, all of a sudden now we can run major tournaments. Okay, we're now going to start major tournaments again, but this is the new structure, and this is what we're going to do. And of course, Wizards will do an announcement and everybody will whinge and complain about it, but it is what it is.
I promise you we'll turn up and play.
Yes, we will.
Well, I'll be excited when you make an announcement that there will be an announcement.
Yes. All right, so we might sort of touch on the last part that we were going to sort of hit on this whole hypothetical situation, and that is what if Wizards, let's say we do go another 1.5 to 2 years with not being able to play paper tournaments. They're not running any major tournaments. You might have stuff getting run on a local level, whatever, but somebody, probably somebody from Hasbro goes, okay, our paper sales have absolutely bottomed and our digital sales are going through the roof. This is where the future is. We're going to shut down the paper side of the business and go solely digital. So for me, obviously, that has massive implications financially for people with their collections and things like that, but we sort of touched on this before we started recording. That opens up a whole new world for Wizards, which they've never been able to dabble in before, which is they've always been tied to their paper cards. And once you print your paper cards, they are printed and that's what it says on the text box, and you've got to stick with that. As soon as you get rid of those paper cards, you don't have that problem anymore. So aside from the being extremely sad that there'd no longer be paper cards printed, Cracker, what are your thoughts on that happening, and do you think it would ever happen?
I'd be really surprised. I think things would have to be absolutely catastrophic for it to end up in that place. I'm not saying it's impossible, but, the world would have to change even more than it already has. The interesting thing is you talk about the value of cards. They immediately skyrocket. Yeah? So people aren't losing money anymore on things being reprinted because there is no reprints. So anything that you have now is one of however many there are that exist. So I think the value of collections goes up. There's also no longer the
demand, though.
Well, I don't know that that's true, because you're still going to have this fundamental group of people, and the player base will shrink, but given the opportunity, would you rather play Commander on Arena, or would you rather sit down and play with Commander decks that we've got? Like Chewy, if you could never add another card to your cube, would you still cube?
Every day, if I could.
Right.
Absolutely every day.
So it's interesting. I think that there's, there's this, it would be, strange to say the least. I don't know, man. Obviously, it would be difficult. And part of the problem there is that, as you said, Wizards have always been tied to their paper thing. And as a digital game, it's not amazing, right? We are, for the most part, trying to replicate digitally what we play in paper. So I guess that lets them, make changes like, Hearthstone or Gwent or Eternal or any of these other kind of, modern TCGs. I don't know, man. It's so alien to think of, really.
I like the idea of going, this Oko Thief of Crowns card is a bit overpowered. Let's just, jump into the source code and change this 1 generic mana to a 3, right? And it's a really simple change to make. And all of a sudden, Oko costs 5 or whatever mana, and it becomes a less impactful card. I really like that as an option. And as Shorty alluded to, we haven't been able to do that because of, things are printed on bits of cardboard. But it's a I really like from a game perspective where you can go, oh, there's, I don't like this thing. I'll add an extra mana to it, or I'll make this do, 1 less damage, or whatever it might be. I'll make Uro a 3/3, and it's
would still be really
the
good.
balance of the game could be vastly improved if it was solely digital, but that's also a slippery slope with things, and people could get disenfranchised by that sort of change the same way as they do with, bannings. So
yeah, like
I don't know is my answer, I suppose.
So like I've probably thought about this more than you guys, just because I've had this thought in my head for a few months, but I would see, if they announced that, straight away you'd have a whole bunch of cards that would just completely tank in prices, like from the financial point of view. You're going to have a whole bunch of collectible stuff that's going to retain its prices, and you're going to have some things that people are going to keep playing for a while, but overall you're taking a huge hit on the prices of your cards. You look at things like basketball cards and that sort of stuff we've spoken about before, like the upper deck cards we all had back in 93, 94, that back then were worth a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Now they're worth literally nothing. You've got like a few random Michael Jordan cards and things like that are worth money because people like them, but that's it. So I would see Magic going the same way in, not immediately, but over time, because
sure,
you're going to have your people that are going to continue playing their commander decks and playing cubes and things like that, but eventually they're either going to stop playing the game if that's all that they're playing, or they're going to continue playing the game on Arena, and there's just going to be too many new things to be doing that their paper cards just don't do anymore. And you might stick them in a cupboard and you pull them out every now and then and play, but it's never going to be the same. It's like pulling out a copy of Monopoly or something like that. It's like, hey, you want to play some Magic? Oh, yeah, we can play those old commander decks, that sort of thing. But Arena becomes a different game. I would see the player base, obviously there'd be huge uproar, but the player base, you'd have a whole bunch of people that just go, no, I'm done, I'm quitting Magic, I can't believe you've done this, and you'd lose a fair chunk of people. But I think they would make those numbers up pretty quickly, and I don't think it would really affect the overall player base in a huge way. And then, having that option to being able to nerf their cards when they need to and make those small changes would be such a huge thing for the game that they've never been able to do before. And we have seen erratas on cards, like we had, Hostage Taker before it even got released in paper. They had to make an errata, so the cards that are all out there are wrong. They say one thing and that's not what the card actually does. You've got all these old cards that say different things. When they changed the targeting thing, Lightning Bolt now says...
Well, old cards are even different creature types now, right?
Yeah, also, so they've done it before. And one thing I floated as an idea when, probably like a year ago, when Field of the Dead was a huge issue in Standard, I floated the idea of, why don't you just make it legendary? It's a super easy change to do. On Arena, super easy. You just make it legendary, done. That's where the bulk of your player base is playing. And playing in paper, you just go, okay, well, the land is now legendary. Like, that's easy. It's no different to your Planeswalkers also being legendary when the old versions don't say that they're legendary and things like that. So, that's an easy fix, but it still leads to confusion in paper, and that's that whole issue of being tied to your paper physical cards. But when you're a digital-only product, you no longer have that issue. So I don't see it happening either, as you guys said. I don't see them stopping printing cards unless we get to a point where, if we go 3 years and there's no Magic tournaments, paper tournaments, that's when it's going to be like, okay, why are we still printing paper cards? Or, I don't know, there's a shortage of trees or something like that, and they can no longer print physical cards, but I think we're a long way off of that.
Charge all the people $1.50 to see them. That's it.
But, I definitely see them pushing much more into the digital world for their tournament structures and tournament runnings and the way that they're doing things.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that's at least the near future, right?
Yeah.
Got a question for you then. Let's say 3 years down the track, that day comes, and Wizard says, no more paper cards. Do you stop, or do you keep playing?
I'll just transition to Arena, and right back to my first point, there needs to be a shift, and people will need to adjust, and there will be a portion of the community that will need to be supported through that.
Yeah. For me, I think I've only played physical paper Magic like 5 times this year. And that most of that has just been catching up with you guys randomly when we're allowed to and playing. I've played like 2 tournaments maybe this year. I don't know, but I've played so much more Magic in the last 6 months than I probably have in the last 10 years because of Arena. So if they stop printing physical cards, yeah, I'm not going to be super happy about it, but I'm not stopping playing the game. I love this game. It's such a good game, and whether there's physical cards or not, the game is still the same. What about you, Cracker?
Good point.
Oh, I agree. I would be sad and keep playing.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. I'm too invested, man. Like you said, it's just too much fun, and we have an avenue to continue doing that, which I'm really grateful for. Like if COVID had happened 3 years ago, oof.
Ooh,
man, that's a whole nother conversation.
I would not be keen on playing Magic Online all the time, and that's all I could play. I probably would have stopped playing Magic if that was the thing, but Arena is good.
All right, I guess that sums up this entire conversation, doesn't it? Arena is good.
Arena is good. Yeah.
We could have saved you, 53 minutes, but
TL didn't listen.
All right, yeah, I think that will do us. I think we intended on this episode being about half an hour, and we've gone nearly double that. So that's what happens when we just sort of free roll it and just ramble. So we'll do the wrap up, and then you guys can get out of here. So we didn't mention it at the start of the podcast, but we have been on the last couple. We have a new sponsor on board. So Josh and Pat's MTG Bazaar. They are a Facebook auction group. They run auctions every weeknight with special lots going up on the weekend. So go and check them out. Just jump on Facebook, search for Josh and Pat's MTG Bazaar, or just as soon as you search for Josh and Pat's, you'll find them. Pretty easy to find them there. And check out their auctions and let them know that we sent you. If you want to find us over on Twitch or Twitter, or find us on Facebook as well, just search everywhere for Magic Beans Cast and you'll find us there. I am on Twitter at Peace Inc. Chewy, you are?
At Chewy MTG.
And Cracker?
At Joel Hill _.
Very good. We'll do a full league update next week, because that's been kicking off. We've got quite a few matches going in there. It's been a bit of fun. But that's going to do us for tonight. So thank you as always for listening, and we'll see you next time.